Welcome back to Super Metroid. Last time we defeated Dragon and gained the space jump. We're feeling relatively powerful again. Why did I shoot him? We're feeling relatively powerful again. The progression through this game has been kind of interesting, but also really neat, with simultaneously making you more powerful over time, but also making sure that you're always a little uncomfortable in the situation that you're going into. And we just gained a pretty decent power-up, all things considered. And we're about to gain another. So looking at the map, there are 2 rooms left unmapped, 2 places we have not been. And this door was gray before, but now is blinking. So of course we're going to be inclined to go in here and check out this new room. This room is pretty much all about teaching you how to space jump. Because there are spikes, it's very difficult to traverse without the space jump. And believe me when I say, until you know how the space jump works, and given that it is kind of awkward to use, this room is shockingly difficult to get through. I especially remember playing this through as a child, and it was a nightmare getting through this room. Even when I picked the game up later on, and still didn't quite have as good a grasp on the space jump, this is a rough room. So these purple cacatacs, whose name escapes me, much like the previous cacatacs we ran into, have a very high percentage of dropping super missiles. Hey, that door is gray too. Or it was before, and now it's open. Which brings us into this room, where this is the room that we first entered from Criteria. We glanced at this room along the way, and this would be a quick way to get us down and out of Meridia now that we're effectively done here, but there was a gray door up there as well. And given that we've now seen 2 different gray doors that started blinking after defeating Dragon, we should probably check out this one as well. You can approach from the top, but it kind of involves wall jumping in order to get here, as by the time you fall down this far, space jump will no longer let you jump, or you can simply space jump up from below. This room can also be kind of a pain to get up. I have memories traversing this room, but I think if it was when I was doing randomizer runs, and I remember trying to do this room without certain power-ups, and it proving to be very difficult. And what a pain in the butt killing all those guys was. Oh, so this is something I didn't mention before, but we saw these pink space pirates earlier in Meridia, and I just jumped over and avoided them, but if you tried to attack them, you would have found you can't hurt them. Not even with a super missile. Charge beam, nothing. Their armor is simply too strong. But here we find plasma. Now, in Metroid 2, plasma was powerful, but not necessarily always the best option. It was still difficult to hit things with it, and even compared to something like the Spazer, it wasn't necessarily unbelievably powerful. This plasma murders. That's what it does. That's what its job is. You need murder? I gotcha. Now, the room in here, notice the door turns gray. The door will not change until all of the space pirates are killed. Which, of course, now that you have the plasma, you can now do. This room, by the way, if you don't have space jump, is virtually impossible to get out of. I remember randomizer runs. You go in this room as a last resort. Specifically when you're hoping to find space jump, because if you don't have space jump, and you don't get space jump from this item, you're not getting out. So before we progress, now that we have the most powerful weapon in the game, let's talk briefly about weapons. And something I haven't mentioned yet, which is on the item screen, you can actually turn all of these off. I've shown this, but I have not actually spoken about it. And this is something that, after Super Metroid came out, we, as players, were asking constantly for stackable beams, especially after Metroid Prime had you swapping between each of them, which was actually used in a very interesting way, and I'm not going to say that was not a good decision, it absolutely was. But we were asking for something like Super Metroid with stackable beams. And Fusion gave us stackable beams to a degree, but it wasn't quite the same. You didn't have the option of turning items on and off. And I think one of the most important things about Super, and its ability to turn items on and off, is player choice. It's understanding that when I got to that one room as a child, with the spikes and the flowers along the top and bottom, I could go turn off high jump boots. Even though high jump boots are required, of course, to get around, and you can very easily modulate your jump to get through that room, but I could still do that. Is there any real reason to turn off Morph Ball or Bomb or Spring Ball? No, not at all. But it's left up to the player to decide how they want to approach situations. And that is what I very much appreciate. Now, in talking about the various beams, there are... Let's first talk about one thing and then I'll talk about another. Beam damage. So your base beam. This beam does 20 damage when it hits something. Not a lot. The next beam that you get is Spazer. Spazer does 40 damage. Twice your power beam, a good upgrade. After that you get Ice, which is 30. So not as good as Spazer, but by this point you should already have Spazer and you can combine the two. And then of course there's Wave, which does 50. This was the most recent beam that we got, so it makes sense that it's the most powerful one that we've gotten. Samus, that beam is not coming from your gun. I also want to add... Oh, and we just got plasma. Now, I mentioned plasma murders. That's what it does. So wave was the strongest at 50, and up until now it went 20, 30, 40, 50. What do you think plasma's gonna be? 60? No, plasma is 150. The base beam, not comboed with anything, just this, 150 damage. For comparison, a missile does 100. Then come the beam combos, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but we had Ice and Spazer. Typically, when you combine two beams, like Ice and Spazer, it combines the damage of both of them and then subtracts 10. So Ice and Spazer, Ice is 30, Spazer is 40, that's 4, 5, 70, subtract 10 does 60 damage. So 60 damage. That's good, this is more than Wave. If we tack another beam onto that and use Wave on top of that with 3 beams, it's typically the damage of all 3 of them added together and subtract 20 instead of subtracting 10. So Ice, Wave, and Spazer would be 30, 40, and 50. For 9, 10, 11, 12, 120. So subtract 20 from that for 100 damage. The regular beam that we've been running around with up until now did 100 damage, the same as a missile. It just froze enemies, so it wouldn't immediately one-shot them like a missile would. Now when you put Spazer into the mix, you notice, or not Spazer, when you put Plasma into the mix, you notice Spazer gets turned off. But when you add Spazer to the mix, does it add Spazer in too and subtract 20? No. When you add Plasma in, it adds up the damage of all the beams that you have equipped and adds 20. Ice Wave Plasma, which is what we have here, 300 damage. Which, for comparison, is the same as a super missile. This is powerful. Oh, by the way, want to know how much a charge shot does? Charge shots are typically 3 times the damage of a base shot. Hitting an enemy with a charge Ice Wave Plasma is the same as hitting them with 3 super missiles. It does turn off Spazer, and I believe the increased damage from Plasma, given that it does such an obscene amount of damage, is also to compensate for the fact that Spazer is turned off. I remember as a kid we'd joke, oh well, it would just be way too powerful if you put Spazer on too. And I feel like it would be much easier to simply let them add Spazer in too, and then lower Plasma's damage down to, I think 90 would be the equivalent. Because if you subtract the 40 from Spazer, put Plasma in, that would put it Plasma at 110 would effectively be the same, but then the charges add 20 instead of subtracting 20, so that would be 90 down to 80, 70, 60, 50, the same as Wave? If you had all of them equipped and wanted to do that. I believe the reason they don't allow you to combine Spazer with Plasma is, note that every one of these can be combined with the other, and they all have unique graphics. You want to combine just Ice and Plasma? Or, like, just base Plasma? There's a graphic for that. You want to combine Ice and Plasma? That's it? That's all you want? We gotcha. There needs to be graphics and coding for all of these. Oh, you just want Spazer and Wave. We haven't shown that one off. Spazer and Wave. And there needs to be a charge shot equivalent for all of these. When you think about it that way, how much, for something, almost nobody is really going to care about in the grand scheme of things, how much extra coding would they have to do to have Spazer equipped at the same time as Plasma? They would have to make a unique beam for Plasma Spazer Wave, Plasma Spazer Ice, and Plasma Spazer Ice Wave. 4 unique beams that will almost never be seen, and charge beam equivalents of them. So now that we have this, understand for a moment that having ice on drastically increases the damage that you're doing. It increases it by 50. Even though ice is 30, it also adds the 20, yada yada yada. If we're looking only at wave and plasma here, this does a massive 250 damage, which is still far and above anything that we've been using up until now, and is enough to one-shot most enemies in the game. If you don't want to have to shoot twice to kill someone, turn off ice. But as soon as you need that raw damage, say you're fighting a boss, turn ice back on. Now that we've talked at great length about beams, let's also talk about the fact with how plasma works. Because as we re-enter this room, plasma pierces enemies. I'm gonna go back in here so we have a lab. Plasma pierces enemies. It will hit them and continue on. At this point in the game, most things will simply be destroyed by the beam or have special coating in to mitigate this effect. You see, he only took damage from the beam once and had iframes until the beam had passed all the way through him. This is how you have to handle this. Otherwise, since it's piercing through the enemy and overlapping the enemy the entire time, it could continue doing damage every frame it's overlapping the enemy. Because you have to have killed Dragon before it's possible to come in here. The door is gray. Have to have killed Dragon. It is physically impossible to fight Dragon with the plasma beam. Because in order to even get to Dragon, you have to traverse through the entirety of Meridia, which is entirely underwater and unbelievably difficult to do without the gravity suit. It's virtually impossible not to have the gravity suit. In order to get the gravity suit, you have, no questions, to beat Phantoon. Therefore, it's virtually impossible to fight Phantoon with the plasma beam. This also goes for Kraid, but I want to focus on those two specifically. Because it's virtually impossible to fight those two without or with the plasma beam, they didn't worry about programming in that mitigation for them. Which means, if you fire the plasma beam at Phantoon, it will pierce through him and deal damage every frame it is overlapping him. Of course, recall that you have to use a charge beam or it simply will not hurt bosses. A charge plasma shot against Phantoon destroys him. This is only something that you can encounter in a randomizer run, though. But it's hilarious. For something similar, Crockmire. Remember how much they take damage based on, or he moves backwards based on how much damage we do. And recall that Charge Plasma, Ice Wave Plasma, does 3 times the damage of a super missile. and it deals damage every frame that it passes through him, or at least something in that vein. If you hit Crocmire with Charge Ice Wave Plasma, he just walks backward until he dies. And it's hilarious. Now, one very last thing to talk about beam-wise before we move on, because I've rattled on for quite long already, is there is an optional thing in this game that's pretty neat, and also serves virtually no purpose. And many people would play through the game without even knowing that it's a thing that exists, much less finding a use for it, which is charge beam combos. Or combo beams, or some such. And it's not something that you would happen upon accidentally in the game. You have to have a single beam equipped and charge. And then select power bombs. And when you charge up, you get a fancy little effect. Neat! This is not something that you would encounter casually by accident, because you have to have power bombs, which means you have at this point already had the chance to encounter Ice and Spazer. So it's very unlikely that you would ever have get power bombs and only have one beam. But it works with all 4 beams. This particular beam is called X Factor, and if there's an enemy nearby, you see it homes around. If there's an enemy nearby, it actually homes in on that enemy. And speedrunners have actually found a use for this, though I forget exactly where. Spazer is a little weird. Yeah, nothing too fancy. That one's kind of cool. Seems like a waste of a power bomb, though. So, with that said, now that we've talked at great length about beams... Really? Let us move on. This is also almost every item in the game. We're missing, according to the item selection screen, a single item, and we'll be getting that one later. For now, though, we're feeling fairly powerful. I mentioned this earlier, and we can talk on the fly here, but when we first started out, of course, we were very uneasy. Alien world we don't know anything about. Even space jumping through this falling sand is a pain in the butt. Because the sand is still pulling you down. So, of course, when we started out, we were uncertain. The planet overall has a very creepy atmosphere. And we were alone and weak. And over the course of our adventure, the game kept being creepy, but slowly got us more powerful. Even trapping us down in Upper Norfair. But by the time we finally broke free from Upper Norfair, we were feeling fairly powerful about ourselves. We were free to go about exploring. And we could revisit everywhere we've been before and absolutely destroy everything that we encountered. And then came Crocmire. Crocmire on his own wasn't necessarily powerful, though wasn't necessarily terrifying on his own. but it was an enemy that we had no way to kill directly. So despite our power, we couldn't kill it. And then even though we killed it, it was still coming at us. It kind of put our power in perspective, where we realized that even though we were powerful, that didn't mean a lot. And then, of course, from there, we moved to wrecked ship. We're fighting undead things, ghosts. How is that something that us having gained power makes us feel good about? It's still creepy, unsettling. Then we moved to Meridia, of course, which the underwater, just by its very nature, is an unsettling area. And at this point, we've had the wave beam for quite some time, too, so going through Meridia, we're feeling a little uncomfortable the whole time. But we leave Meridia with space jump, plasma, we're feeling good. And we understand that we're coming up on the climax of the game. We're unbelievably powerful at this point, and despite how unsettling much of the game has gotten, there's only so much it can do. So at this point, the game knows, well, we just have to make things scary for a different reason. We have to make things scary because they're powerful. It's the climax. This is where the drag-out fight happens. And if you've played the first Metroid, you would know what's in the depths of Norfair. It's the only place we haven't been, if you're looking for a location to go to. This giant lava pit right here that we could not make our way through. Actually, we could, but that's beside the point. It's the only place left. You can explore everything else except this one room. And if you came in first, which I did come to show off, you would have seen Ridley's face. Now, of course, we saw Ridley in the intro. Ridley is one of the 4 statues, and you see down there an angry little face, which we've seen for the past 3 areas. We know that's Ridley. The climax is drawing near. So that brings us to this room, which I'm going to turn ice back on for. I'm actually going to keep ice on for the most part. It's just easier than swapping back and forth. And now that we have gravity, our defense is high enough that this lava doesn't even hurt us anymore. And with the space jump, we can even get all the way out. Though getting past this last idiot always proves troublesome. But there you go. Now, there are, in fact, as I mentioned, other ways to get up here. Now, one is simply good tricks. So freeze this guy, freeze that guy, and immediately turn off gravity. This is a trick for if you want to get up there without gravity. That's pretty much it. I think that's just gravity, because even if you have, like, space jump or something, you can't use gravity. So without gravity now, you wall jump off him, you have to cut your jump. I'm not going to bother taking the 5,000 takes it's going to take to get up there. But you have to cut your jump just a hair short at the peak. You cannot do a full height jump. And that'll take you down here, where you can wall jump off of this block. Then it's just a matter of praying that you don't get hit by that guy's flame. You will not go high enough to actually get all the way up, so you have to wall jump off of this block at the very peak in order to make your way all the way up. But there is a way to get up without space jump, and in turn, or without gravity, without space jump, without pretty much anything. Now, another way to get up, which is kind of fun, You know what? Just shut up for a second. Whee! Ah, dang, almost. That is called a gravity jump. Do I have to be here for it? Nah, I was too late. This actually gets you very close, but not quite. There we go. There we go. So that's how you can get up as long as you have gravity. You have to have gravity for this trick to work, but it is a way to get up if you do not have space jump. Now, I've mentioned that scientists still are trying to understand how the water physics in Super Metroid work, and this abuses that. So what it is with Gravity Suit on, you can move at full speed in water, which means when you jump, you actually jump pretty fast. Without the Gravity Suit underwater, you jump very slowly. However, you coast for a very long time. Like gravity is reduced. You will float through the air for a much longer period of time. So what you do, you have to crouch jump, which I mentioned previously, crouch jumping gets you just a hair more height, and pause the game. Just before the screen goes completely dark, jump, and hold jump into the pause menu. Go turn off gravity, and unpause, holding jump. So when you come out of the pause menu, you are now holding jump and no longer wearing the gravity suit. This gives you the initial jump speed at maximum speed from the gravity suit, but then lets you coast through the air as though under very low gravity without the gravity suit. And in turn, you'll carry that really high speed really high into the air. This technique is useful in a couple places around the game, but this is probably the single most useful location for it. Save point here. And an elevator taking us down into Lower Norfair proper. Even the music changes. This is Ridley's Lair. This isn't just Norfair anymore. This is NES Metroid, Ridley's Lair. So from the start, you can go left or right. Left is actual progress, that you can have some fun if you go to the right. So these guys cannot be hurt, even by that. But they can be hurt with super missiles. They can maybe be hurt with charge beam? Yeah, they can be hurt with charge beam. So even with a beam this powerful, the enemies down here in Lower Norfair are rough. These things are out for blood. And of course, that's what's expected at this point. We're not trying to make you uncomfortable anymore. You're at full power. What do you have to fear? So if you want to fight, we'll give you a fight. So you can come up here, but this is a dead end. Bunch of crumble blocks there. Remember that for later. Wish I could shine spark down. Wow, did that not... I'm surprised. I'm surprised. That the shine spark does not hurt them. By the way, in here... power bomb blocks all over the floor. So this is somewhat of an unintended path. You can go this way if you want and completely skip the left path, but you're going to have to be bombing or power bombing through a lot of these pillars while there's rising acid. You can make it, it's just a pain in the butt. So it's probably better to take the left path. Or, you know, this path. Oh, but that gate is facing the wrong way. It sure is. So in this game, this only works with left-facing gates, such as this one. But you can, in fact, get a super missile on the other side of this gate. Okay, let's get the claw maneuver ready for this. That's not an easy trick. This is not a trick that I even attempt when I'm not, like, casually. Because I'll just blow through all my super missiles, and that'll be the end of it. So, needless to say, this is supposed to be an exit. But the way we came in, it sure wasn't. What's in here? Energy recharge? Energy recharge. You know, also Misery Mire. The screw attack. We'll come back to that. So this is a way to get the, especially if you're consistent with doing the gate glitch, this is a way to get the screw attack much earlier. Oh, I shouldn't say much earlier, but it avoids a rather extensive event. Oh wow, he actually fell. I don't think I've ever seen him actually fall. So let's just pretend we said, wow, that way's really hard to go in. Let's go the other way. Oh wow, I can just kill these guys? I didn't think I could just kill these guys. I knew I could freeze them. Probably because half of them are over acid that I just never bothered. Okay, more acid. And there's something in there. Power bomb blocks. So funny thing, you do this and he grabs you. Funny thing is, I have no idea why, but this statue actually checks to make sure you have, I think it's the space jump and one other item that you really have no business getting here without these two items. But I believe it actually checks to make sure you have those items before lowering the acid here. Otherwise, you'll just get in his hand and... Oh, not even gonna let me in your hand anymore? Otherwise, you'll just get in his hand and spin. And you're just like, what's going on? I've never, outside of randomizer runs, I've never even had that happen because, like, you have no reason to get here without that. Hey, remember these guys? From Metroid 1? Be careful here. Because those are crumble blocks, and you're likely to fall down and then have to go through the whole loop to get back here again for this one missile. You can space jump across easily enough. Another easy way I mentioned before is if you have the spring ball, You jump the instant the frame you touch the ground if you're using Spring Ball. And you can just... You know what? Let's not go here. It's a silly place. No, I'm just kidding. Another Torizo. Gold Torizo. Okay, you can't shoot him. Can't do that. Plasma Beam takes care of his projectiles easily enough, though. Now, if you try to, say, missile him, he just sidesteps him. Can't hit him with missiles. A super missile? Well, you can't hit him with them, but you gotta dodge your own super missile coming back at you. I'm curious. It just does 1 energy tank. It nerfed the return damage. It should take off 3. So you can. But remember what I said before? About the charge beam being unbelievably powerful? Ice Wave Plasma. This is 3... Every time I hit him with one of these, this is 3 super missiles. And that's a dead Torizo. I mean, I was hecking around. I've mentioned before that as long as you have Ice Wave Spazer, your charge beam is actually a feasible weapon. Once you have Plasma, honest to goodness, don't even bother with missiles anymore. But there is something else we can do with him. For one, if you come up here, you can actually see him up here. Kind of stuck in the ceiling. And you gotta stand at the right place, and I'm gonna have trouble doing it. Nope, not quite. Alright, we got it! So Gold Torizo's AI is designed never to actually walk over you. He'll walk up to you and then try to jump backwards. If he's too close to you, he tries to jump backwards to get away from you. So if you, like, bully him into the corner like that, he will never walk through you to get out. He'll be stuck there in the corner. Of course, he still has his attacks, but most of his attacks will go over your head. Except for the beams, the arc beams that he shoots out. And I believe it's pixel precise, but don't quote me on this. But if you can get in a very specific location, pixel precise location, the arc beams will actually spawn on your left-hand side. So you're standing just in far enough that they don't hurt you. You have to be ducking, too, or you will also get hurt. And then, as long as you hold angle up and angle down at the same time, you aim straight up, even while crouching. And then you can just charge shoot him right in the stomach the entire time and kill him. If you can get him into that position quickly, you can beat him taking almost no damage. So that looked suspicious, and of course you come up here, and there's a super missile. I mean, you're going to want to see where he came from, and you can see the outline of breakable blocks around. And this, of course, is how you actually get the screw attack. The screw attack is unbelievably powerful. I believe it does... Oh, I forget exactly how much damage it does. The screw attack does 2,000 damage per frame that you're overlapping someone. That's insane. Of course, most anything that's actually worth a darn is immune to it, but it is also designed that it's designed to just kill anything. So regular enemies can just be destroyed with it. Like, 2000 is designed to be high enough that you'll just kill anything with it. And enemies that they don't want you one-shotting with it, they just make immune to it. Now, we've been going for quite some time. So I'm going to go back up here to that save point that was at the top of this elevator. And I'm going to say, until next time, everyone. With Gold Torso down, we've gained the Screw Attack and the final major item of the game. All that's left now is to push forward to the end. Until next time, everyone.